Hello, Franklin Whitner here, making another video about the Michael Chekhov system, and this time in relationship to, specifically to the Gestalt Therapy process. This is a video that I couldn't make until I made a lot of preliminary thinking and videos to lead up to it. But on the other hand, maybe it's possible just to grab it, the main idea, without all that preparation. We'll see how it goes. From Michael Chekhov, I'm using his masterclass lectures, which you can find on the internet just by typing in Michael Chekhov and finding masterclass lectures. You'll find it all there. And from Gestalt Therapy, I'm using the basic theories of Gestalt Therapy. Okay, so I'm focusing on the section of the lectures where he talks about 5 guiding principles. And after that, or as part of that, I want to deal with what he calls psychological gestures. And my main question here, the main issue, is in Gestalt Therapy, we deal with what's called essences of the personality. And Michael Chekhov, the center of his system, is what he calls psychological gestures. And for many years, I was confused. What's the difference? It seems like on the one hand, the Gestalt process is finding these basic ideas in the personality of a person, and Michael Chekhov in the psychological gestures is saying that he wants these psychophysical, he calls them gestures, experiences, to be based in the basic ideas, he calls them sensations, experiences, whatever the person's personality. So it sounds like they're saying that we're dealing with the same thing here. But my current understanding is that, yes, in a certain superficial way they're very similar, but philosophically they're very different. So here we can start off with a basic distinction between Aristotle and Plato. We don't have to deal with all of Aristotle and all of Plato, just I would say one most basic idea is that Aristotle would look at the world as one big organism with some kind of unmoved mover somehow as part of it, and at the same time as separated from it and somehow or other controlling it. Plato doesn't, the way I understand it, we're talking not about one big organism, we're talking about different levels. There's the level of pure ideas, you might say in the mind of God if you're religious, or just pure ideas in the world of ideas if you're not so religious. And we call that the macrocosm, and below that there's a microcosm where us humble creatures crawl around in our lives every day. And somehow there's no one big system, there's a big gap between them, and somehow the only way a person can fathom what's these ideas is some kind of either a mystical trip, like some mystical religion. If you're into Nachman of Breslov, that Platonic mysticism is the basis of Breslov Kabbalah. We can see that sort of thing going on in the performing process, and I've referred to that in many different videos. I just want to go through, starting here in this lecture, so I'm going to take what Chekhov calls the 5 basic guiding principles of, and I'm going to compare them to parallel things, what seem parallel things, but maybe but I turn out to be not so parallel things in Gestalt Therapy. Let's see how to go about this. Well, here are my notes for the lectures. I wrote them down word by word, and actually put them on the internet on my blog, franklinwepner.wordpress.com. You'll find these lectures written out for you if you want to download them. Anyway, so the 5 principles. He says here, 1, training the actor's body through the use of psychophysical exercises. 2, using intangible means of expression to achieve tangible results. 3, utilizing the actor's spirit and higher intellect to unify various aspects of the actor's performance. 4, using each component of the method as a means to awaken all parts of the method. And 5, how to use each aspect of the technique to acquire more artistic freedom. About training the actor's body through the use of psychophysical exercises. So he starts by telling actors that all kinds of training that emphasizes the body is not what is good for the actor, but not really what the most important thing is. The actor needs that our body is in full with our psychology, with our soul. We need to develop the body from inside by means of our psychology. To permeate our bodies with psychological values. All kinds of physical techniques will lead you astray. It's only the psychological side of it. Then he says here, which is something which is going to be very confusing, he will always know what is the gist, the essence of each exercise. Now here he's using the word essence. Now in Gestalt Therapy, they also use the word essence. But he's talking about something different. So he's saying the essence of the exercise, the psychological side of it. We have to imagine our body as a kind of sponge which eagerly absorbs all that is given to it in the form of psychological values. Now here's the beginning of the problem. In Gestalt Therapy we start off with a basic awareness, and gradually a person discovers more and more gestalts, units of experience that come together, integrative, and the person discovers there are sides of himself that one against the other in opposition, and so he used the two chairs to set up the dialogues, and then finally discovered conflicts between the two sides. And one way to do Gestalt Therapy is to exaggerate the conflicts as much as possible. The director helps a person do that, and then to go inside, close your eyes. Once you have the conflict clear, the comments goes inside, daydream, and find some daydream image, and then that new image becomes a new point of orientation, starting point, and then that allows you to, the new image somehow integrated the two sides and brought you to another level to start another cycle of awareness, opposites, and a new idea. And that's called the rhythm of contact and withdrawal. You contact this moment of awareness, and it builds up to the two opposites. And then you withdraw, go inside to the void, in Hebrew they call it the KABBALAH-23, the empty space. And then you find a new idea. And by doing this process, which is a very personal experience, little by little, you build up to bigger and bigger, more and more important, more encompassing opposites. And finally, if you do it like I like to do with people, 3 hours working on a dream, you can look back and come to some major revelation, or you could have a lot of emotions coming together, get a big explosion, a kind of what they call an aha moment, or a moment of enlightenment. Or they could be little explosions, just realizing something or other. Okay, now those are essences. Each time you get a couple of those opposites there, and they come out of this process of pure, what we call inductive logic, rather than deductive logic, which is breaking things down. Here we have integrative logic, which is discovering more and more integration here. When it comes out of that process, we can rightfully call these things essences or pure ideas, because each time you go inside to the void, and from nowhere, this magical macrocosmic world of pure ideas, somehow it's like you just laid a golden egg, and you've got this new idea to start off with. This is exactly what Chekhov does not do. he ignores it, or he doesn't know about it. I don't know which. I don't know his whole life story. But this is the main problem, that actors listen to Chekhov, and they get it filtered through teachers that know even less than he did about it. And they end up with somebody just telling you, okay, now open yourself, close yourself, open yourself, close yourself. There you got love. That's an essence. That's a PG. Now let's do another one. Stand up, roll down, or go this way, go that way. 2 more PGs. You're loaded with PGs. Go ahead now. Go on Broadway. All right. I won't say it's bullshit, but it's like drinking wine, which is 99% water, because it simply doesn't have the essences, the roots, the pure ideas coming from anywhere except some superficial dancy experience that you can teach to a herd of people and charge them $100 an hour to learn it. So that serves the purpose of the industry, because directors and studios make money and actors pay money, and they end up spending half their life being waiters and God knows what, just to pay for it, and then they end up without the training they need at the end of it. All right, so I'm not part of that. I'm against that. All right. So what I'm trying to do here is to show you how it should be done. And now, the problem is, when I start thinking about it, on the one hand, the Michael Chekhov system, the way it's laid out in the lectures and the way I've seen people teaching it on videos and the internet, has value in it. No doubt about it. If you read the play, for example, one of the 41 exercises, read a play, imagine a character jumping around doing something. Go out there and now embody that, what you just projected out there, what you just radiated out there, and go embody that character, you know. That is one of the techniques of Gestalt Therapy, you know. You do imaginary thing talking to your mother, and then you play your mother talking to you, and that's one of the ways to get to the essence, the pure idea about mother, or whatever it is that you need from your work. So there is value in it. He's doing something, but he's doing it in a very jumping from this to that, and actors get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, but they don't get the big overall process that you can find, what we call the phenomenology of the spirit, the development of the grounding that a person needs to be able to really have substantial. The actor prepares by Stanislavski is more systematic. That doesn't use the imagination as much as Chekhov does. But again, another attempt to go through the gradual process of awareness and discovering essences of the personality, but it's done from an actory, directory point of view, and not from the therapeutic point of view. So let's call it the therapeutic point of view for now, although really Gestalt therapy is simply the latest canned version of 2,500 years of dialectical thinking that you could just as well find in Plato or Aristotle if you know how to read those texts. And whether Plato or Aristotle would call it Gestalt therapy, I doubt it. They would call it something else, and maybe they didn't do it the way Gestalt therapy does it today. But the idea is the dialectical foundation is right there, and so this is nothing new about this stuff. Anyway, so here we have a problem that people, me for example, if I'm teaching actors, I can teach them the whole Michael Chekhov 41 exercises and not do anything with Gestalt therapy. Or I could, I will do that. Or I can go through 3 hours of dream work, and so do my usual 3 sessions with a performer, 2 hours on awareness, 3 hours on one dream, 3 hours on another dream, spaced about a week apart. And I got 8 hours, and I take notes, and I feed all that stuff back to the performers, so they've got a list of maybe, who knows, 20 essences and things that they can use for build their characters. You know, we peeled the onion, and then we use those discards to build the characters and everything. I've outlined that process so many times in the other videos, especially actor as creator. I spelled a lot of this out there. So the way I see it now, after all this homework that I've done, is that on the one hand we have something very valuable from Chekhov. He gives us the bridges that we need to go from say Gestalt Therapy, where we have systematic, in-depth work on essences, to actor techniques that can correlate with other techniques. You know, you can do it along with the Gouda Hagen, along with Meisner, along with this, along with that, and it could be part of your toolkit. But if on the other hand, you can go to get some of this basic personality development stuff, and how do you bring them together? That's the big question. How to relate these two systems together. And I'm just going to say it right now quickly, and then I'm going to go back and spell it out more precisely. The way I see it now is that there ain't no simple way to do it. That when you get to the level, like I like to bring performance to this level, where you have on the one hand, say, you've done your 8 hours of preparation using the Gestalt process, you've got your 20 essences or so, where you can express them as PGs, they are psychological gestures. You do them, you know, you've worked with them on music, you've worked with all kinds of techniques to take this basic gesture like swimming and expand it into a whole vocabulary. You have a nice palette of all kinds of colors and shades and tints that you have available. But on the other hand, you got this play, and you got these other actors to work with, and it doesn't quite match with your particular material that you've developed. Where there you've got a bunch of techniques that correlate with in a superficial way with the play, with working with the performers and things like that. So you need some kind of a bridge. And I'll repeat it again. I don't think there is a simple bridge. I think that what needs to be done here is that with all your wits, if you're working with the director, with all your wits and with all the director's wits, you need to just make those connections yourself. From Gestalt work, you learn how to do an action. You learn what are your blocks to your action. Are you too much focus inside on your awareness, or too much focus outside on your awareness? Are you using your imagination properly, or not using your imagination properly? Are you crippled by self-judgments? Are you a nervous wreck from retroflected body tension? Are you stuck in being driven by this dibbuk, that your domineering mother or something that you swallowed whole when you were 5 years old? Whatever the source is here, you've worked with some of that stuff anyway, and you know how you deal with an action, and you know something about how you block your actions, how you're stuck, and all this stuff is available for using as characters. And you know what it's like to work 3 hours on a dream and then come up with some overall hindsight wisdom where you can look back and and you know that's a super objective, that's your unmoved mover if you're looking from an Aristotelian point of view, or that's your anamnesis, your origin if you're looking from a Platonic point of view. You know all that. You know how to work working with your phenomenology of your spirit. You know how to do that. So now you have this basically simple job here of working with some creative project, and let's say you might be working with actors that know nothing about nothing, and somehow you've got to fit your well-developed machine here into that basically third-grade environment. I don't think there's a simple solution. I think what it comes down to is art and intelligence and motivation and all of those basic qualities that whether either you got them or you ain't got them, and that's what it is. You know, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I'm thinking of one performer. I must have done 10 Gestalt sessions with this guy, and I tell him to work on an exercise. He'll come back a month, a year later, he hasn't done anything. Tell him to read this, he hadn't read nothing. Give him a simple exercise to work on a scene, he hadn't done nothing. You know, if you're that kind of performer, you ain't going to get it. I don't think you'll ever get it. You may as well just do the simple stuff and go for the TV commercials, whatever you can do to make a few shekels or dollars, whatever it is. But if you are a person with enough smarts and enough motivation to use the tools that you can get from Michael Chekhov and Stanislavski and Franklin Wepner and who knows who else, then you are potentially an artist, a master of your trade, who can do something, who can function. if you need a PG let's say, I'll just make up an imaginary example here. Let's say you have a character. You're watching you're reading Brer Rabbit and Tar Baby, the story. You know, so you've got to play Brer Rabbit. You know, and so you see an image of Brer Rabbit jumping out there. You go out there and you start jumping around like the image you just saw. Okay, so then you start your wheels of associations going. Now, what do I have in my life, in my material, in my tree of life that this screwball Wepner helped me develop that I could use here? What can I transfer? Now, the fit probably wouldn't be exactly, but there might be something in that tree that we worked on where we took each of these different essences and expanded them. That might be something that you could bring in there. And a little bit of that would connect you back to your roots that you discovered. Certainly, my 8 hours of doing a Gestalt like I like to do with a performer is not going to give you all the stuff you need for the rest of your life to work on 100 different roles. But it's going to teach you something about how to do an action and how to use their natural blocks to doing an action as part of your character, as obstacles in the character, whatever. All right, now that I said all that, let's go back to the principles of Chekhov here, and I think you'll see it's a perfect fit. The second one is the intangible means of expression, and certainly these Gestalt essences that you got in your personality work are intangible because they're coming from the world of the void, coming out of the void, the world of pure Platonic ideas. If you're a Kabbalist, you call it Tzimtzum process. You're contracting your ego and allowing some new ideas to come out of the void there. And these are the intangible means that you need to back up to ground your tangible performing processes. So that fits perfectly. The only trouble again is Chekhov doesn't tell you how to get to these intangible means. In 4 words, preaching is not teaching. Chekhov preaches very well what I'm trying to teach. Okay, he preaches it. You can read that stuff, and if you're an actor and be hypnotized, oh boy, that sounds so wonderful and mystical. I think I'll do that. But then you try to do it, he won't tell you. If you do what he says, it'll be superficial, and then you say, ah, yes, too bad. Chekhov was wrong. It's mysticism, nonsense. But if you really understand what he says, and if you back it up with some hard thinking and a little bit of personal exploration, then you'll see that he's right, but just giving you something on a kind of a 3rd grade level. All right, so that's true. We need the intangible means, and we have them from the Gestalt process, okay? We have some of them from Michael Chekhov, but not enough. He talks about the intangible, one of the intangible things you need is the messages that you get from the playwright, the messages you get from the director. And he says these are Stanislavski's super-objective as a whole and of each character. Fine. But what is Stanislavski's super-objective? Again, it's a sloppy version of Gestalt Therapy. Adopted to the needs of a practical directing. So you need to back up Stanislavski's super-objective with the Gestalt idea of for what they call identifying with the coming solution, where when you're, for example, trying to say goodbye to bury your dear mother, who because you don't feel you didn't properly mourn her. So as you work on that, the need to finish that action is pulling you, and that becomes a super-objective, and then maybe you can relate that thing with your mother to some other thing that you're dealing with. Again, you're not always playing your relationship to your mother, but it stimulates your creative process and teaches you how to work. All right? There ain't no simple way to translate working with burying your mother to being Brer Rabbit, jumping by Tar Baby. You need to find those links yourself. And I'm not saying it might be so easy, and the fits are not perfect. But at this point, after doing this sort of thing for 40 years, I don't see that there's a simpler way to do it. Okay? All right. Next, number 3, the spirit. Okay, now that's a big one. So here we have a lot of Michael Chekhov jargon here. He's talking about a wise scientist. Let's see, how did he put that? He says, the spiritual element. So far we have introduced it only in a modest way. What is spirit in our theatrical context? Our higher self, coming from our shining higher self. Wonderful. What's that? You know, he doesn't give you a clue. The love which permeates our entire profession. Now, this thing about love as being our somehow higher self is fine if you're into Aristotle. In other words, if everything is one big organism and you're dealing with contacting, everything can contact with everything else, that's called in Gestalt Therapy the contact boundary. And that's one way of looking at Gestalt Therapy, and very important. And in Leo Shaya's book on the Kabbalah, we talk about the world of soul. There's the body, there's soul, there's spirit, and there's transcendental man or something like that. Okay, so there's 4 levels. So the level of soul, and he uses the word soul. He talks about the soul. And he says that the soul accumulates life experiences, give them over to the spirit. Now that's exactly what happens in Gestalt Therapy. On the level of the microcosm, I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that, I'm aware of this, and then I go inside, and I have the conflicts, and I go inside, and I get a new idea. That getting the new idea from the void is the spirit that integrates somehow or other all the stuff. And he's saying that the spirit is the great integrator. That's what Chekhov says, and he's right. The trouble is, he doesn't tell you that the spirit needs to come from some spiritual place, not just from your bright ideas or from you feeling. Wouldn't it be nice if everybody in this whole theater and the audience also was part of one big group organism, and I am somehow or other the mind of that group organism, and I am somehow or other the shining higher self of that group organism? That's not enough. It's not enough to just say you got to respect and find good feelings towards every actor, whether you hate him or not, whatever, things like that. It's not enough. You need to have some tools to get to that basic higher self, you know. And doing this process of rhythm of contact and withdrawal a number of times, each time more encompassing, encompassing your mother, encompassing this, and encompassing, it teaches you how to encompass. So when it comes to the theater, and you want to encompass the audience, you have some idea what it's like to expand yourself, you know. And he talks about actor needs to give yourself. Another element here of this love thing. Yeah, what does that mean? You need to, again, every time you go inside, find a new higher idea, the two parts of yourself that were stuck there, for example, the top dog criticizing the other side, those 2 elements need to die, so that you can see things from a higher point of view. That means you have to give up your need to be the top dog in the criticism. You have to give up your need to be the underdog and the sly one that sabotages everything anyone tells you to do. You need to give up that stuff in order to get to a higher level. But if you haven't discovered that you are stuck in this business of being the top dog, criticizing everybody and torturing yourself, and the sly underdog weaseling out of everything and sabotaging everything, if you don't know about that yourself, so the idea of rising above that and getting to a higher self is nonsense. It's just words. Okay. So now another thing he's talking about, this higher. So your soul level, which is world of Yetzirah and the Kabbalah, the objective history process in the Gestalt Therapy, you know, going from this game to that game to working your way up to working with your, saying goodbye to your mother. That's called the objective history. It's a history, an objective here and now contact experiences that you can look back at as the history of how you discovered your super objective or whatever. Okay, so I'm going to use this phrase, the objective history. Now, in the Gestalt process, we have this objective history which takes place on the level of the soul. All the time you're accumulating. I'm aware of this, I'm aware of that. And every time you go inside, you accumulate some more internal stuff. And you accumulate, and then finally you get to the end after 3 hours, and you can look back with this higher point of view, your super objective. So, what he's saying is your higher inner scientist is the ability to be at the end of the process and look back at it, on top of it. And his assistant is this fiery, what he calls your fiery heart, that's working through all these opposites. What they call the Gestalt Therapy, the rhythm of contact and withdrawal. Contact either this, contact that, get into the split, the opposites, the two chairs, go inside, get the new idea. That's the fiery, that's the assistant, that's where what does he call it, your fiery, your thinking heart, your fiery heart. That's where you get to these qualities that are devoid of feelings because they're born in the thinking heart. Why? Because every time you go inside and get a new idea, you left the feelings that led you to that conflict behind. And you can't, an idea without feelings at the beginning comes out of the void, and you start on a new cycle of the dialectic there, relatively pure of feelings. But then as you go along, working on that, more and more feelings get involved on that level. So each time the new cycle begins, you start off kind of like reborn. It's a process of rebirth. And this endless process of rebirth is a transformation that he's saying every actor needs to go through to get to your mask, the mask of the character. Okay, and the mask is this ultimate integration that's pulling you forward, and then you want your everyday self to somehow meld, to be absorbed in this higher self, and that's exactly what he's talking about. It's the same thing. All right, so that's when he starts talking vaguely about your thinking heart. He's talking about the ideas that come from this heart. The heart is the feeling level where the two sides are stuck into very strong opposites. And if you like Kabbalah, so that's the heart is the left side of the tree of life. Let's say your left side, and the heart, the spirit, the mind is the higher intellect is the right side. So we're talking about Bina or Chokhmah, if you like to think in terms of those things. And the new idea that comes out of the void is the thinking part, the new idea, and the thinking heart is the place that crucible. It's an alchemical process of matter being negated and spirit coming out of the void there. That's what they call it in Kabbalah. You know, if you have water, let's see, on this side, water, air, earth, air, fire. So the void is the air, so you have to have the void so that the fire, the new idea, can come out of that. All right. Now let's go back to this idea of love, which for Chekhov is the big solution to everything here. Now, from the point of view of an Aristotelian universe, everything is one big organism. True. The contact boundary needs to be the center of the process, so that everything is related to everything else. Love equals relationship equals contact equals awareness. And this all happens on the level of the soul accumulating more and more things. And then in this model here, the spirit is the ability to synthesize all of these elements. And this is one way of doing Gestalt therapy, as a matter of fact. One way of thinking about this process here. That it's a big process of endless synthesis and integration and opposites coming together and some kind of compromise. It's probably a model for all kinds of problem solving and conflict resolution therapies and who knows what going on, and political scientists going crazy over this. But the trouble is, this Aristotelian organic way of looking at things is only half the story. When you do Gestalt therapy, when I do Gestalt therapy, I need to have both sides available, either the Platonic or the Aristotelian model. If I'm dealing with a person that's very fragmented, then probably at certain points in the process it's very important to stress the integration, to give the person a lot of experience with awareness and having the two sides. Let's say it's you and your father, instead of going to the extremes so that you can then go inside and get to the void and then get a new idea. It might be more important to just have you and your father have a delicate, rational discussion to try to discover that it's possible to relate to this guy rather than have to simply throw him in the trash can, ignore him, or feel violence toward that person. So for this kind of a client or actor, it's very important to have that corrective experience doing a lot of work on contact and call it love, okay? And the ultimate product is a person that's able to be in contact with all kinds of parts of himself, with his fantasies, with other people. Wonderful. But the trouble is that there are other people that are very different than that. And they're too much one organic blob. And there's not enough differences going on here. Because the model here, of dialectical thinking is the one and the many, and then the one and the many, or identity and then difference, and then identity and difference. The oneness balanced by the manyness with a certain amount, slight more emphasis on the oneness, okay? And that gives you a proper balance. If you're Maimonides' theory of prophecy, if you have that proper balance, you could be a prophet. If you're too much into the opposites, the distinctions, you can be a professor but not a prophet. If you're too much into the artistic, emotional stew, then you could be an artist or a politician, but not a prophet. But if you're in the middle pillar, not too much Abraham, not too much Isaac, but right there in the middle, the Jacob pillar, then you're balanced and you could be a prophet. That's the model for action in Maimonides. Now, so for a person that's too much glued together in one big group or one big organism here, that person needs more to become unglued, to get fragmented more, to get to the extremes, so that person can jump out of his skin, you might say, and get up to the next cycle of the dialectic there, and with a new higher point of view, and encompass these two elements that were just the two extremes there. So that process requires what they call in Gestalt therapy creative aggression. So rather than basing your work on love, working with a performer like that, person like that can get a lot of benefit out of working with aggression, because in order to make that, have those two opposites somehow die off and be negated, the negations of the negations, they need to be destroyed. There's a certain amount of what they call in Grotowski Theater Laboratory cruelty, a certain amount of a creative aggression that needs to be directed in the work. So in this case, for example, in Gestalt therapy, if you have a top dog person that's you're dealing with some introjected father or somebody that's very, very authoritarian, and you're trying to get out from under that person's thumb. Well, one of the things that Fritz Perls, the Gestalt guy, might tell you to do is, every time this guy tries to tell you what to do, tell him what do they say? Fuck you. Tell him fuck you. Okay, and that way you get used to expressing this aggression more. So fuck you is good therapy for Gestalt, and it's also fuck you is good therapy is good material for an actor. And fuck you and loving everybody are not necessarily the same thing. That's the point. So when Chekhov is telling you love everybody, that could be an excuse for getting sucked into some big Marxist, overwhelming, encompassing fascist regime. So you need to have the proper balance where individual freedom is respected, the identity and the difference are in proper balance, the oneness and the manyness. So the fuck you side of it, the creative aggression is needed to balance, because the other side, too much, without too much of the oneness, becomes violence. And in Gestalt Therapy they talk about the difference between creative aggression, using aggression creatively to pursue the action, to move ahead in your life, versus being stuck in violence. If you haven't worked through, for example, your need to torture yourself and torture everybody else with being a perfectionist, then that violence of criticizing everybody non-stop and torturing yourself with endless demands can give you a heart attack and kill you even. How many people, you know, end up dead rather than creative, because they push themselves over more than they can handle. All right. So again, love is a solution as long as it's balanced by individuality, creativity, and the free use of creative aggression in a proper balance. Okay. You see that in the Brechtian theater a lot of times, you know. For example, thinking of that song "Pirate Jenny," you know, she's up there singing about how one day she's going to destroy kill off these people and kill those people off, you know. And Brecht was using theater as a political tool, and he was using the aggression, but he was using it creatively to counteract violence, which was the fascism that was in danger of annihilating the whole world at that time. All right. Now, so if Chekhov is so addicted to oneness and loving and swallowing everything, including the audience, up in this big love experience, then he comes when he starts talking about how an actor is supposed to deal with monotony. He comes across in a very superficial, anemic way. He tells giving the actor all kinds of compositional techniques. You know, you want to have variety, faster here and slower there, and louder here and softer there, and this quality there, and the opposite quality there, and start off with this quality and work your way to that quality. But these are compositional techniques that are used on a much later level in production to get artistic. To finish things off and make it into a lovely package for an audience, but they're not the basic elements, basic structural elements that an actor needs to have to build up his character and to build up his ability to work with his own life creatively. The true variety, true way to avoid monotony, is to work with creative aggression and to work with the extremes as well as the centering. Okay, too much extremes. You end up with a problem, and too much centering, you end up with a problem. Again, the middle way. You need the middle way. So Chekhov's techniques about avoiding monotony without the basic work on your personality, so that you are simply already not such a monotonous, humdrum person to begin with, is like putting a Band-Aid on a cancer. You know, doesn't do much good. All right, here's a good example of how Chekhov is very good at giving you one side of the coin. We never create alone. We co-create. This is Chekhov. We co-create with the playwright, with the director, with all our colleagues. The nature of our profession requires that we shall be united with all of them. The worst enemy of our higher self, spirit, is our cold, small, petty, analytical mind, figuring out, reasoning. It is always sneaking, suspicious, sniffing, always finding fault in everything and everybody, always criticizing. Its nature is egotistical. Its tendency is to divide, to isolate, to separate. Okay? I'll go a little further here to separate. With all its might, it fights with the creative tendency of our noble creative ego to unite, and it succeeds because it is a very aggressive element of our psychology. Okay, now that's a lovely projection. He's projecting his own violence, need to annihilate individuality in the method here. But what he's calling our cold, critical, analytical mind here is exactly the ability to make distinctions and to work with opposites in a creative way. Of course, overdoing anything is a problem. We can become stuck in our deductive mind and never get to inductive logic awareness at all, or we can do too much centering, too much opposites and not get enough centering. There are all kinds of problems along the way, but simply saying that making distinctions rather than swallowing everybody up in this love here is overdoing it. Okay. What's missing here is on Chekhov's part is an awareness that there's a dialectical process here which needs to have both the Aristotelian organic model and the Platonic system of levels of worlds model in a proper balance. You know, you have the same thing religiously speaking. You know, you have the Dominicans and the Franciscans in the Catholic world. The Dominicans are the Aristotelians, and the Franciscans are the Platonic mystics, and the same thing in Judaism. You have the Chabadniks with the Aristotelian big system with the Rebbe on top, and you have the Breslavers, each one off in the woods. So the Breslavers don't want to talk to the Chabadniks, and the Chabadniks don't want to talk to the Breslavers, and they see each other in the street. They make all kinds of nasty gestures at each other, and the fascists don't want to talk to the communists, and it's endless, you know. But it's also could be lethal. So not being balanced, even in such a wonderfully creative person like Michael Chekhov, can be dangerous, especially if a particular system becomes the main system of an acting school or a theater or of a country even, you know. All right. Now, if I turn to these 41 exercises of Chekhov, any one of them is very important. Now, take the stuff about the psychological gestures. There's nothing wrong with what he says if you understand it properly. For example, he says, do the PG and the acting alternatively until it becomes evident to you that behind each internal state of movement in acting is hidden a simple and expressive PG that is the essence of acting. Fine. As long as you're working with the essence of the acting. But if instead of that you're working with some shtick that, you know, you came up with in a 2-minute improvisation, where some acting teacher or basically is just leading you through some kind of a dance, open, close, and then so you start using your open, close idea behind the psychology of Hamlet or something like that, and that's simply dumb. It's dumb. True, you need to work off of the intangible essence there, but by essence we're talking about something essential. Open and close is good for an accordion, but it's not good for a human being. And you are not an accordion, you are a human being, whether you like it or not. I'm looking at an exercise here, gestures and qualities in nature. Start with simple observations, look at or imagine forms of different plants and flowers. What gestures do these forms conjure before me? Combine them also with qualities. For example, a cypress streams upward, gesture, and has a quiet, positive, concentrated character, quality. Okay, transferring that example, that is very close to Gestalt therapy right there, even though it's relatively superficial, still, you know, when you do Gestalt therapy, you look at an image, for example, could be an image of a flower, and you could go out there then and play act the flower, and that's fine. That's what Chekhov calls radiating out an image, and then radiating something out, and then going embodying it. Okay, that's fine. But if you haven't gone further with that and discovered, you know, that flower in relationship to what? It's about contact, and if you're talking about love, you're talking about awareness, you're talking about contact, dialogue, that everything is in relationship to everything else. But a flower that's not related to anything is a very anemic flower in a world based on relationships, like this phenomenological work here. So you would need to go home and take that flower and have it discover what's a relationship. Maybe there's some worm that's trying to eat the flower, and then you have the dialogue between the worm and the flower, and then that could lead you to associations to some person that you knew in childhood that stuck a pencil into your leg one day, and then you have a discussion with that person, and then out of that will come the new idea, devoid of feelings, that like it's supposed to be, the pure idea, which you would call the quality. And that quality would then encompass the relationship between the flower and the worm, or something like that, you know? So, true, he starts you off on something here, and then he you know, it's third grade, and you need, if you want to be a third grade actor, fine, but how far will that get you in the marking place, okay? I don't know. All right, another exercise here. Atmospheres. For a long time I couldn't figure out what he meant by atmospheres. He says here, imagine the air around you filled with the atmosphere that you have chosen. No more difficult than imagining the air filled with light, dust, fog. You must simply try it practically. How simple it is. Okay? And then this thing about atmosphere is supposed to pervade your whole work on the play, which might take several months. Now, Gestalt therapy, one of the basic principles is when you start working on a dream, is to play the environment of the dream. For example, if you have a dream about a cloud and a flower, a cloud and a tree talking to each other, the environment is nature, or the environment is this particular forest, or this particular spring day, or whatever it is. But that's just the beginning. Then you become this thing. I am this forest, you know, and I'm not, or you have to encompass the cloud, and so I am this spring day, okay? I am this spring day, and then you start doing your identification and see where that leads you. Here in the here and now, in the messianic now, so you can discover some new ideas out of the void. I am this bright spring day, and here I am in Tel Aviv. It's a cloudy day, but still it's supposed to be pretty soon. It's going to be sunny. And I got all kinds of bright ideas here, and I got a new spiffy new apartment here, all kinds of problems, you know, with noisy neighbors and with this and that and the other thing, and the guy upstairs smokes, drives you crazy, but but aside from that, still, here I am, and I'm burgeoning forth in Tel Aviv in the spring, you know, okay? Now, I just started working on it, then I could do all kinds of opposites, you know, have the guy pretend I'm the guy upstairs with his cigarette, you know, and have a battle with him. All kinds of things I could do with my imagination to expand that idea of this atmosphere of being a bright spring day. But to simply imagine, you know, bright spring day, and that's my atmosphere, and then go ahead and work 3 months on a play with such anemic material to work with, you know, you're starving your imagination. And your imagination will take revenge. It doesn't like being starved, because then you have to fill it in with all kinds of other superficial bullshit that's not going to convince anybody, you or anybody else. So there's no substitute for getting real roots, real essences, and the stuff in the process of Gestalt therapy is not so difficult. I'm sure a reasonably intelligent 5-year-old can do almost anything, almost all of it. So it's just a matter of this pathetic laziness and cowardice of the performing arts establishment when it comes to dealing with the art of performing, and people get stuck just starving themselves and you know, they say cowards die many times before their deaths. And that's true, you know. How many actors, you know, spend their lives just trying to chew on wood rather than sinking into something that's more nutritious. Okay, maybe that's enough for today. To sum up, I see a lot of value in the Michael Chekhov system as bridge techniques going from something more basic, leading to very practical applications of that material, as long as you have some basic essences, real essences, more substantial essences in your personality, and especially if you balance the organismic point of view, everything is encompassed by love, with the pure ideas coming from the void, the macrocosmic, microcosmic model of Plato. You have to have that balance there. And if you have the balance properly balanced, then you have a dynamite foundation. You have the foundation, and you have the roots, and you have the branches, and you have the whole tree. All right. So that's what I'm preaching here, the whole tree.